Okay, so we're going to select star from employee. We just get a reminder here of what data we have to work with. So our first question is, amongst programmers, gophers, and analysts, what is the lowest paid salary? Well, let's kind of take this in steps and stages, and we'll get to the answer, but we'll have a chance to play around a little bit with some aggregate functions. In fact, maybe even before I try to answer this question, let's just play with some aggregates anyway. So if I were to zoom in here, let's just go select, and I'm going to push enter and say from employee. Remember, that's my little trick. That way when I come back up here to work in the projection in the select area, I do get some IntelliSense as long as I wait for the system to catch up and figure out what I'm doing, right? So, you know, we talked about those aggregate functions, and I even have them in this slide over here. Let me just, on the opposite screen, this is the one from our reference PowerPoint, right, up over here. So these are some of the commonly used aggregate functions. So we have things like count and average and min and max, right? So let's think about what they do. Well, count, I love to count, right? Yeah, there, you see I count down every time when we do a video. So, you know, let's just see what that gives us. So I'll say count. And all of these you have to put brackets and supply something. But if you don't really have anything in particular in terms of a field or anything to count, we can just use that same little short form. I can just say count star. That really just in this case means I'm going to count how many records are returned, right? So right now if I did count star from employee without anything else, I can run this. And you see what we get. We get one line, no column name because I didn't give it a alias with the keyword as, and I get 7, right? So it's counted how many rows I have, right? Okay, so let's keep on going. Let's well, one that is fun to work with is salary because it's numbers and all different values and so on. So let's say I want to know what the average salary is across all 7 employees here. AVG. But in this time, instead of putting star, I name the actual field that I want to average, right? So that's EMP salary. And while we're at it, I can keep on going and ask more questions of this whole set of data of the entire employee table. I can ask what's the maximum salary? Basically just doing the same thing with max instead, EMP salary. And why not do the min? Remember, it's really not case sensitive. I'm just putting capitals here because I'm trying to make it. Now to save screen on the, save room on the screen, I haven't put aliases, so none of these will actually have column headings, right? I probably should be putting, you know, average salary, so, you know, so it shows that. But just for a quick demo of how the functions work, we can see here, right? So basically, I have a count of how many records there are, 7. This is the average salary. If I had a comma in there, it would be 64,000 and something, right? The maximum salary is $100,001, and the minimum salary is $47,000. Now your numbers might be different because remember I was in here playing around the other day, and I haven't refreshed the data since I ran some updates and so on. So your numbers might be a little different, but you see the idea, right? So that's, you know, what really the power of these aggregate functions are. They let us do sort of some statistical analysis on data. And it doesn't have to all be the same field. I just happen to have the nice currency value field, and that's a good one for doing minimums and maximums on and so on, right? Okay. There's other aggregate functions as well, but the truth is average, min, max, sum. Oh, that's another one. I didn't include sum. Maybe I'll just throw that in at the end here. Sum of employee salary.
So how would we go about giving them the columns a name?
Ah, okay. Well, we'll do that for this one.
Just for, yeah.
Yeah. Remember, what's our keyword is as. All we have to do is say as after any expression, and we can give it an alias, basically, for the column. So sum of the salary as total. Actually, this gives a chance to talk about something else that's probably worthwhile. If I just said total, it would work. if I want a space, right, in the alias name, if I just put a space and say total salary burden, right? How do you spell burden? B-U-R-D-E-N?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I see it's underlining because it just says, wait a second, you can't just have odd words in the middle of a select command here. There are two approaches. You could put quotes around it, but I don't. What I prefer to do is square brackets. Because quotes works sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on a database setting. There's an optional setting for each database you can set as to whether quoted identifiers is allowed. So it may or may not be turned on depending on what database you work in. The little square brackets always work, right? So I like to stick with things that always work. Plus, you know, we end up using quotes around data values so much that I find having quotes around aliases for columns as well, it's visually confusing to me. So that's why I like to use the square brackets instead. So now when I execute this little query, okay, zooming in here, you see our last column is now total salary burden. So that's the entire payroll for the company added up. Okay, we use the sum function to add them all up, and as I said, at this point we're still getting all 7 records. Now if I wanted to, right, well, let me just run select star from employee again, remind me of what's in here. Okay, maybe I just want all that information, how many employees, what their average, max, minimum salary, and the total salary burden of the programmers as a group, right? Then all I'd have to do is add a where clause. Okay, where the EMP title equals, now because this is a string, we do put it in single quotes, right? Programmer. If I highlight that and execute, there we go. Don't know if you can see from the back of the room. You should probably have something similar on your screen. Okay. I don't have aliases everywhere because I wasn't being a good boy, but you see the count is 2, right? The average is here. See, our highest salary has stayed the same because the person with the highest salary happens to be a programmer, and same with the lowest salary. What a coincidence. I should have picked a different group. And the total salary burden really is just this one plus that one because there's only 2 of them. So I can see that the math looks like it's probably working right for my sum function as well.
Why does the average go so many decimal places afterwards?
Because whenever you do division, it uses a whole bunch of decimal places. You can format the output and limit it to how many you want. We'll get into that later on.
Okay. So
okay? Yeah, because it does. Okay. All right, well, with that example, maybe I'll move that example up here because it might come in handy later on to steal from. And I'm going to come back down and focus on the actual question. Our question was, amongst programmers, gophers, and analysts, what is the lowest paid salary, right? Well, which aggregate function do you think I should use here to find the lowest salary? Min, for sure, right? So I don't need all these others. I'm just going to keep that one, the minimum salary, and I'll definitely use an alias here because I'm trying to answer a real question, as lowest paid, or lowest salary, L-O-W-E-S-T. Oh. Okay. From employee where, well, here, we want to have programmers, gophers, and analysts, right? I'm going to steal that. I think this will probably work. Now, instead of equals, what's the keyword we learned last week that allows me to check if a value is in a different set of a comma-separated list of values? It's not going to be an equal. Let me just get all the, I will have to change it so it's programmer.
And you get rid of the end, right?
Yeah. Gopher. Oh, I deleted my gopher. Oh, wow. I should have refreshed my data before I started class.
We can just make a manager.
Yeah, I could make it manager just to have somebody included. And we get rid of the and, right? That's not part of a comma separated list. Analyst without the S. Delete the S.
Right.
So what's the keyword that goes here instead of equals?
Is it like?
Like is used for pattern
I'm trying to
matching.
figure out-
Yeah. When we want to check if the title is a member of this collection here. Oh, let's go back to our slides here then, and with my PowerPoint. I need this one. Oh. Okay, it's on the. It's too hard to read from back through. I apologize. But determines if the data value is a member of a search set. It's right at the second from the bottom. In, right? That's what we need. So over here, I'll get rid of the equals and I'll just say in. Right? So if the employee title is in this list of possible values, right? If it's any one of these, then it will be included. So execute that, and there we go. Lowest salary, 47,000. Not a surprise, because the lowest salary from our playing on earlier was a programmer that made 47,000. Okay, but that would be the correct way to write the query to answer the question, right? So that's a chance to use one of the aggregate functions to find the lowest salary and what it is.
How do you find the name?
I'm sorry?
How do you find the name of the employee?
Ah, that's in the question coming up. But that's a good thought. The question was, how do we know the name of the employee that makes that amount? We can't do it just in one query here. So we're going to introduce what's called a subquery, which is my next slide in my review, right? We can find out what the salary is with a simple aggregate function like that, but to find out who has that, we have to do a little bit of extra work. Okay. I might as well finish these couple here. How many people were hired between these two dates, right?
Can you lower the display bar at the moment so we can still see the text before? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, just trying to see the one prior. I'm still getting it.
Oh, up here? This
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, don't be afraid to move ahead.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I'm going to keep working then. So, how many people were hired? So that's going to be a select. And again, it'll be from employee. So, what kind of aggregate function will help us find the answer here? Thinking about our aggregates again. Yeah, we want to count. Exactly. So we're going to count. And, unless there's a special reason to do with count, I pretty much always do count star. Later on, you'll learn there's certain circumstances where you might count a specific field. It can change things a bit if it's null or not, but for the most part, count star is going to answer every question you need in terms of counting right now. It returns the number of records that the query returns. So we're going to do a count star, but of course we want to say as. If you want to be really nasty, you could say number of people hired between this and this, right? That would be a very clear column heading. I'm not going to put the whole thing in. We'll say that number of people hired, right? So that'll be our output. Our projection is just this one figure, the number of people hired, and of course our where clause is going to be for our restriction, right? Hired between these two dates. So that's EMP start. And between is that one we've learned. It's a little simpler, less typing. Between, I can even steal some of this. Is this in the right order? Yes, it is. But with dates, we treat them like strings in terms of writing the SQL. So put single quotes around them. Between and. Okay. Now again, because I deleted an employee, my numbers might be different from yours. But if I execute that one, I have 1. What do you have? 2. Okay, probably I killed that poor gopher the other day. I let him go, give him his pink slip. Okay, I should rerun my inserts, I guess, but I don't want to take time right now, maybe on the break. Okay, so that is, again, use of an aggregate function to answer a question. Number 3, this is a chance to do some work with what we did on Monday, where we talked about our action queries, where we do insert, update, or delete. Those are our 3, count them, 3 actions that we can carry out. So the question is, how would we add this person to the database? Employee number 9, first name Melissa, last name whatever, right? Well, once again, I'll refresh my memory on the data in the table. So help me out. I know we just talked about it, but what kind of command do I use to add a new person to the employee table? Insert, exactly. Insert, and we say into, and the table. Employee. Now, if I was supplying a value for every column, then I could use that first form we talked about, right? But since I'm not, it's probably a good idea to me to use the second form of the insert we talked about, where we provide a list of the names of the columns that I'm going to give data for, right? So really, I just have data for the 3. I could do it in any order I want here. If I wanted, just to be, I would normally do it, employee number first and last, because that's how they are in the table. But just to show that I can do it in any order I want, maybe I'll go EMP last, comma, EMP number, comma, EMP first. Right? And then we supply a list of values to insert. So again in brackets, okay? Now these have to be, if they're strings and quotes and dates and quotes and so on, right? So they match up, they understand the data types. So the last name has to be in quotes, and I'm going to steal it right out of the comment here. Employee number. Well, I think it's a number, isn't it? Yeah. And then EMP first.
Why is 9 not in quotes?
It's a number.
Just that's period?
Yeah. Or did we do it as a char? I can't remember. Let's just try it this way and see if it works. Okay. So here we are. Right? I'm just supplying data for these 3. If you think back how we wrote our create table statement for the employee, we didn't worry at that point about saying whether things were null or not null, right? So by definition, everything except for the primary key would allow a null value. So we don't have to supply the rest of the data. So when I click execute, that's my feedback, because I just get a message, 1 row affected. So it looks like it probably worked, but we can check quickly with my good old select star I keep handy. And looking down here, yes. Okay, there's my employee number 9, Melissa, right? And notice that we just have null values for the fields we didn't supply data for. That's okay, it fits with the table design. The table design said you can have null values. So later on we can go back and fill that in once we find out the extra information. Okay. Any questions about that insert? If you want, I'll post this script back up in Blackboard as soon as I'm done. Okay, number 4, how would you update that new record for these new facts? Her title is technician and her salary is $65999. Okay, so my first question is, what action query would I use to do this? Would I just insert this new information about her?
Couldn't you?
No, I thought I was a leading question.
It's update.
That's right. This is an update. If the record exists, if it's there in the table, you can't insert it again, right? Not without violating the primary key. We'd have to give her a different employee number, right? Because you cannot have 2 primary key values that are the same. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a primary key. It wouldn't be a unique identifier, right? So we couldn't recreate the record, insert it a second time with this additional information. So definitely, it's going to be an update. Update. With the update command, remember to last Monday, we just say update the table. And then there was a keyword we use that is required whenever we're going to assign values. Anyone remember? 3 letters, starts with S? Set. Right? Now we can do multiple assignments with one. We don't have to say set every time for each field we might assign. So we're going to set, so we have that her title was technician. So EMP title equals technician.
Could you also do your angular brackets there? Instead of quotes?
No, because this is data. Yeah, and data has to be surrounded in quotes. Okay. And we just comma separate additional assignments. So we're setting employee title, technician, and her salary equals, now as a number, we don't have to put quotes around it, right? It's a number. Now, if I ran this right now, everyone would be a technician, all getting the same salary. Not a good thing, right? Kind of ruin the value of much of the data that I have in terms of its integrity. So always remember you need the where clause, right? Now we were given in the information that we have her actual employee number. So it would not be wrong to simply say where EMP number equals 9. Because that uniquely identifies this employee. And there's nothing wrong, I mean, there's no better identifier. By definition, the primary key is it, right? If we know what it is in the information given, right? So that's perfectly fine. If you wanted to, you could write it that, you know, that the EMP first equals Melissa, EMP last equals, right, with an and. But I would accept this because you were given the fact that it's employee number 9. And let's see if we execute that. Once again, we get 1 row affected. And finally, one more time, do a select star. And just zoom in for the back of the room. And sure enough, Melissa has now got a job title, whereas before there were 3 null values here. Technician has a salary. We just don't have a start date yet, right? Maybe she hasn't started. She's going to be hired and start on Monday, so we don't want to put the date in until she actually shows up in case she gets a better offer somewhere else or something.
We went so far.
Okay, so those examples. Let me just, I'll save that. Right? Just review. I should have done a save at the beginning, but so it's just in my download folder. So I'll say practice solutions. Okay, and I'll post this up right back in Blackboard where the questions came from. All right, well, let's stop there in the